Welcome back. Joining me in the studio to discuss this issue is Dr. Fouad Riad, Professor of Law at Cairo University, the former judge at the International Criminal Tribunal, and member of the National Council for Human Rights. Dr. Riad, a pleasure to have you with us on A Daily Debate.
It's my pleasure.
With us also this evening is Dr.Akrum Bastawi, international economic expert, analyst. A pleasure to have you both gentlemen. The Constitutional Court suspended the decree issued by the President to reinstate the Parliament. This issue is being met with a lot of controversy, and unfortunately we still have a problem which doesn't seem to have disappeared, even though revolution should have changed a lot of the way we do business, so to speak, which is we do not explain in enough detail to the people why the Parliament cannot function this way. Where was the problem? The role of the Constitutional Court. I mean, people are mixed, and some, especially those who are pro whatever the President is doing, the supporters of the President, are out in the streets protesting the decision because they don't really know the details. I mean, how legitimate or unlegitimate is the decision? Dr. Fouad.
We answered all these questions today at the National Council for Human Rights. We have here a very important summary of what we decided, and I would like even to mention it. I happened to have been yesterday at the court, at the Constitutional Court, to defend the court, to ask the court to render a sentence demanding the execution of its previous decision. Because, after all, the law which was promulgated by the President, asking the Chamber to resume its activity, in a way hampered and went completely against, it's almost annulled, the decision of the Constitutional Court, which is prohibited. The law itself prohibits, the law of the Constitutional Court prohibits any measure taken to hamper the execution of its sentences, and considers it a crime. So it was a very serious step, but apparently it was explained that it was made in good faith, which I trust, of course, and that they had to do it so that the Chamber, the country would not be before somebody to make the law. But the fact remains that if this Chamber continues to promulgate any law, it's a law made by an unconstitutional chamber, which is bound to be annulled. So it is really a complete. It's not only against the law; it will disturb the whole economy of the country and the whole social life. If all of a sudden laws which have been promulgated during 6 months, for instance,
and they're all revoked.
All of a sudden, all these laws have to be revoked, and Egypt does not need more disturbance. We are at a crossroad.
Okay, I have to capitalize on your being present because there's a lot of confusion with regards to the rights of the Constitutional Court to issue such a decree to dissolve Parliament. I've had people in the studio that said that the Constitutional Court did a violation because they don't have the power to dissolve the Parliament. I'm not an expert, a legal expert. I'm quoting what they were saying. So how valid is this argument?
I've got many people who are not aware of the role of the Constitutional Court. Since Egypt really was living for a while now, for decades, outside any form of law.
Yes.
The dictatorship's law is something completely unnecessary, and even people fight it.
Yes.
I mean, the law in Egypt, the only thing people know about the law, it is that it is something to break. I teach at the university, and sometimes tell my students, I'm teaching law which people endeavor to break. They compete to break it, even drivers in the street.
Yes.
Try to compete who is best to break the law. So that's all we know about the law. We don't know that the rule of law is sovereign and that no state, without law there is no state. There is the law of the jungle, and this is what's happening in Egypt now. What has been happening for 18 months. We stand in a jungle. You cannot walk in the street safely. You cannot live in your home safely, and everybody is taking the law in his hands. Women are completely attacked in the streets. The law of the jungle, and including, of course, the Constitutional Court, because the Constitutional Court is the head of all law, of all tribunals, and it is in charge of controlling any violation by the administration, any law which breaks the norms, the constitutional, which breaks the Constitution, or human rights, it should immediately be annulled by the international, by the Supreme Constitutional Court. Now, even under Mubarak, the Constitutional Court twice rendered a judgment cancelling the elections, and even Mubarak could not stand against it, and he had to dissolve the chamber. There had to be re-elections, and nobody could stand against it.
Yes. Because
it is a crime, according to the criminal code. It is a crime punishable and severely punished if any administration, or any individual stands against a decision, not only of the Constitutional Court, but of any decision of any court. And of course, so this is first. The Constitutional Court is the only competent court to annul any law rendered against the Constitution or against human rights. So what happened is that the Constitutional Court found that there has been a real violation, and this is not the first time, by the way. It happened also in the 80s, in the 90s, and twice the chamber was.
So it's not the first time. It's not singling out anyone in particular.
It's the third time.
Yes. Okay.
And even under dictatorships, under the previous dictatorship, the judgment, nobody could stand against the judgment of the Constitutional Court. So it was found, and it is completely evident that the last elections were based on real discrimination and no equal opportunities between the political parties,
yes,
which are so limited in Egypt, because these parties started only after the revolution, small parties. The only parties which were there already was the Muslim Brothers and the what we call Hizb the National Party, yes, of Mr. Mubarak. Because according to United Nations very research, and I've got the research which I give to the government, no election should be undertaken except at least 18 months after a revolution. Any election taken before that for the chambers will only have as a result the reproduction of the previous parties. And that's what happened. The elections brought back even the election of the president. Yes. The Muslim Brothers, who were ready for the last 80 years preparing themselves.
For this day.
Yes, and they came to take it because they were completely ready. As for the new parties which came out of the revolution, they were not ready, not ready at all. So this was the start. Okay. So even the start was wrong, but it's not why the Constitutional Court took this decision. But the real violation of what can I say, equal opportunities, was when the law, which was abolished, gave 2/3 of the seats to the parties, and these parties, as I said, were only these two, and after all they represented 5 million people, whereas they gave only 1/3 to the independent, who represented something like 50 million. So that was so unequal and a violation of basic human rights, which is the right of non-discrimination. So legally speaking, this judgment was fair and was not new. The fact that it was abolished, I suppose it was taken in good faith, but it constituted, certainly, according to the criminal law, it constituted a crime of not executing a judgment, as I said.
Dr. Akram, now that the dissolved parliament has formed a committee to draft the constitution, because it seems that we always take steps forward and then we realize that we're not really on the right track. Do you think that these members of the dissolved parliament have a right to sit down and draft our constitution? Are they constitutional?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that when I'm through answering, I'd be very curious to hear Dr. Riad's comment on that, given his specialization and who he is. But what I would say is that from two perspectives, as an ordinary citizen, I find it to be a bit contradictory and a bit awkward that there was a big discussion and a debate about who should sit on the Constitutional Drafting Committee, and there was a strong push to try to remove members of Parliament from it, and then now we have the committee composed of individuals whose legitimacy and pedigree to sit on this committee is solely based on the fact that they were members of Parliament, which is now no longer valid. So I do find it questionable. I can't speak to the legality of it alone. I would be very interested to hear Dr. Riad's point of view. But looking at it from a second dimension, and this alludes a little bit to what Dr. Riad also mentioned about what people can expect under the rule of law, is that it does pose a lot of questions from an economic perspective, because all this does is continue to delay the economic return of the country.
As we saw the stock exchange, that just...
Yes, because what happens is you have investors and other economic actors sitting and saying, what is the basis that you're going to be doing this on? What is the basis that you're going to be writing your constitution with? Why are you making arrangements as a country and then coming back and changing them and having squabbles, legal squabbles between the different institutions? So from the perspective of even the business sector, they are probably sitting and scratching their heads and saying, I didn't think these people would be sitting on the Constitutional Drafting Committee. Now, having said all that, I think the most important thing is the substance that will be discussed on this committee, and whether or not the individuals who are sitting on the committee are properly informed and have access to the right type of expertise to assist them in the drafting process. Since you mentioned, sorry, go ahead, you have another question.
There's something, you just raised an important issue with regards to the foreign investors. The president's decision to issue a decree against the constitutional, against a law which, or a judgment which the Constitutional Court issued. How does this reflect economically as far as investors are concerned? I mean, does this give... We were always accused that why don't we have foreign investors? Because our laws are ever changing. We are hasty to change our laws. We have a lot of red tape. We have this and that. How does this reflect? I mean, because you just raised an issue. I mean, as an investor, how would that be taken? The fact that the president can snap his fingers and just change or attempt to change a law. How does this reflect?
Well, in a short sentence, the business community and the investment community, from an economic perspective, has to rely on what they call legitimate expectations, or the predictability of the market. And that means that you understand that what the legal system is there for, the rule of law, is that you know what will happen tomorrow in terms of the system. You may not know what will actually take place tomorrow in terms of events, but you know that no matter what event takes place, if this event happens, this is the system on how to deal with it. If that event happens, if the president dies, if there is a collapse of some institution, all of these things create what investors call predictability in the environment, and it's based on the legal system, it's based on the rule of law. So the good thing about all of this, to be very frank, because we have to try to find something positive.
Glad we can find something good.
And I think what we have to find that's positive here is that the presidency today acknowledged that it is essentially backing off what it said yesterday,
yes,
and it acknowledged that, yes, there is a supremacy for the rule of law, and even if that supremacy is not politically favorable to the president's opinion, he still must respect it. That is a very good sign. It's also, in a way, healthy if we learn the lessons of what's going on now as they draft the new constitution, so that we can be more clear about how there is a separation of powers between the legislature, which is to make law, the executive, which is there to execute and implement the law, and the judiciary, which is there to interpret the law. And so whether or not we get this right, I hope we do, that will have an incredibly huge impact on how fast we have investment returning into this country.
Dr. Riad, we were raising the issue of the legitimacy, for the lack of a better expression, of the committee that is assigned with drafting the Constitution. Now that some of the members in the committee, which were originally selected as MPs, they're no longer MPs, at least according to the ruling right now, they are not MPs. Do they have a right to sit and draft the Constitution from a legal perspective here?
Just to resume, to complete what I was saying, there are two issues actually now. They are trying to find a solution midway, which says that we should only annul the third of the chamber, because the third which really brought up the whole problem, because they are the ones who are the independents, and there was no equal opportunity with them, because they had to compete with the members of the parties who had already 2/3 of the chamber. So they said, why don't we only consider that 1/3 should be re-elected, and so on. And this is the Constitutional Court was very firm and said, no, the whole Parliament is completely dissolved. So this is very firm, and this has happened in other places too, in other countries. Even in the United States, the Supreme Court rendered a judgment saying that if there is a very strong link between the issues of the judgment, so the annulment should be there.
Okay.
And the state should enforce it. If you remember, President Eisenhower sent the army to Arkansas when there was the problem in, I think, in 57, the problem also of discrimination and so on. So that's what is expected from a president, to enforce the judgment of the Supreme Court. There's nothing more supreme in the country. And this is the rule of law. So as far as now the consequences of dissolving the parliament, everything which is built, as we say in law, what is built on wrong is wrong.
Charming.
So now the elections of this first, the election of the members of what would you call that?
The Constituent Assembly.
The Constituent Assembly. Already, even if the chamber was still there, the election, their choice was wrong, because also it was strictly against the law.
So the constitution that they will be drafting will be unconstitutional.
So the constitution will be unconstitutional. They had to, and now the whole thing, the whole thing must be started again. The whole thing was made, frankly, to give the members of the Muslim Brotherhood the upper hand. That was the whole purpose, since they took away the revolution. They took the revolution with all its consequences, with all it carried.
So right now, why is it that there is no law that was issued? I'm just throwing questions here because we don't want to waste a few more precious months and go back to square one again, whereby we would say, well, we have a constitution, but we're sorry, this constitution is illegal. Why is it that right now we don't put a hold on this committee or maybe find another format of
I think that's what should be done. Frankly, as an Egyptian citizen, not only a law professor or a former judge, I think we have to start anew. And I know our president is full of good faith, and he's starting to realize that he is the president of all Egypt. That's very important. And I think that will cause him a lot of trouble with his former supporters. But I think he's on the way to realize that Egyptians love him, and he would like to. I think he should keep this love. And what is worse now, I'm not afraid of the government. I'm afraid of the mob. The mob have been so excited that it will be difficult to control it.
Yes.
Even now, if the president asks the mob to stop, they attack tribunals, they attack judges, they hurt them, they come into the court of law, not only in the streets. If you pass, when the judges, in one case, one of the horrible cases, which had to discuss the nationality of one of our candidates for the presidency. It was the council, what called the state council, was discussing in the beautiful great building, and the mob was around it to put the place on fire if the judgment went against them. The judges had to render a very weak decision, almost to say nothing in the decision, and so that they can go back home safely and run out of the kitchen door. So that's how now, if this is the way the law is being applied, this country is going to have a very hard time.
Dr. Bastawi, how can we get back law and order? I mean, in the past, law was applied, well, partial law, in some cases, I would have to say, was applied, but somewhat forcefully, let's put it this way. You did not respect the law because you really respected the law as much as it was a fear of violating the law. How can we introduce the culture of respecting of law, taking into account that after being bottled up so many years or tens of years, people just don't want to stop right now? That's the problem, that everybody's taking the law into his hands. Everybody thinks they have a right to protest, even when it comes to a court decision. We stand in Tahrir Square to apply pressure. We burn buildings we threaten judges. I mean, you really feel sorry for some of the judges that have to go out there and issue a verdict, not knowing their safety or their family's safety after the verdict. How can we reinstate the culture of respecting of law?
Well, it's a question that falls into three different dimensions. In the short run, you need leadership. The example that Dr. Riad gave about the US president in the 1950s, when what was called desegregation, when the court ruled that African Americans and white Americans have to be able to ride the same transportation and go to the same schools, and it had to be forced by almost military supervision at one point. But how that's leadership, is to be able to break in and do this. So I think the president's decision today is a sign that he's willing to take leadership in the right direction. Over the medium term, I think that the leaders of different political forces in the country need to start to recognize that if they really want to break with the past, if they really want the revolution to produce the fruits that they intended it to, then they need also to step up to the plate and to lead the people that follow them in the right direction by making sure that they don't run into the streets when they don't like everything that happens. There needs to be levels of discontent and expressing that discontent. There's a level which is in the media, there's a level which is in Parliament when there is a Parliament. And then finally, when all else fails, you can go into the streets and protest in a civilized way. Over the third dimension is that the entire culture of our education system needs to change, because from childhood, people are not really brought up to follow the rules. If I want to go and renew my driver's license in this country, and I intend to do it personally, I feel that I'm standing with 15 or 16 or 30 people fighting to jam my hand through a window in order to get the ability to take the transaction through. In any other country, you stand in line, and in most other countries, children are taught from infancy that they stand in single file. This is the rule of law being taught in the most basic, fundamental fashion. So that's how we can bring it back into the culture. So over the long run, we need to change the education system and revise how we look at it. But in the medium and short run, it's really a matter of leadership.
Dr. Riad, earlier in the day, a statement on behalf of the President was issued. And the statement, the main gist of the statement was that they are reiterating that the President is very much respecting the law and the Constitution and the judges. Did you expect to hear a message, or do you think there should have been a message in that statement to those who are standing in the street right now protesting against the Constitutional Court's decision to annul the Parliament? Do you think a statement should have been a message to those people to go home and respect the rule of law? Should a message have been out there?
If I were in his place, I would have done it, because now it's not the time anymore of not half solutions, or vague solutions, or things which could be interpreted in different ways. It has to be very firm. The rule of law is very clear, and the country cannot survive without the rule of law. So whatever the different interests are, and whoever wants to be in power has to know first to know that he has to abide by the rule of law, because if not, it will return again. He will be one of those who will suffer. I mean, if there is no law, anybody can be victim, and the country gradually will disappear. If there is discrimination, we have got great discrimination in Egypt now, and it was existed under Mr. Mubarak, and now it's worse, based on religion. And this is the worst thing that can happen. This great conflict of religion, which never exists in Egypt, which could simply divide the country. There has been plans to divide Egypt since the 80s, and some of them they are now in Congress in America, and even the map is made, I must mention. I remember there was a man who of course, whom we in Egypt here we don't love, and that's Moshe Dayan, who conquered, unfortunately, Egypt when they were in Suez in 1956, in 1967. They told him, "Why don't you go to Cairo?" He said, "Why should I? I leave that to the Egyptians. They will destroy themselves without my help." So we are destroying each other now. We are destroying the country really by this conflict with personal interests. I just wanted to add something to which you previously discussed, and this is how we can create democracy.
Yes.
Of course, as it has been said, democracy should start at home. When you have a family with an undemocratic father, suppressing his wife and his children and so on, don't expect any democracy except the repetition of this. But I think it should start by a very firm law. First we start by law and then by education. Education is important, is necessary. But we should start by the law and very firm rules and forbidding anybody to break the law, not to start with the president breaking the law. So if we have to start with the law, if anybody, so the rules, objective rules, with and stopping the mob. For instance, even in England, in London and in New York, when the mob wanted to take over, they start immediately.
It was a firm hand.
The law was very firm. Here in Egypt now, the mob is sovereign.
But isn't the fact that now if the police are firm, for example, then the police are accused of being violent? I mean, we're running through a vicious circle here, that those who are entrusted or whose job description is to apply law and order are not really capable of doing it because we're not.
They are the first to break the law. So they give the bad example. The law has been broken since, I'm sorry, you were not yet born. In the 50s, we had one of the people in power said, frankly, we are giving the law an unlimited, a permanent holiday. He said that. And since then, the law is in holiday. I think it was in 1956 or 55. And since then, really people realize, and then people enjoy it. Because when I know that law is on holiday, I can do whatever I like. I take the law in my hand. And whoever is smarter can manage. The law has been judgment and law and court decisions have been people trying to. I mean, people avoid and don't implement them if they can. And half of the time, as a judge, I prefer not to go to court because I can have a judgment, a law decision, which I don't know what to do with. So really, what happened is part of a system, but it should not. It reached now the constitutional court, and this is really the great danger.
Okay, Dr. Bastawi, do you think that what has been applied to the People's Assembly should be applied to the Shura Council? Because this is what some are saying, that elections were conducted somewhat in the same fashion, and the same thing should have been applied to the Shura Council.
I haven't been privy to information that would make me aware that there's a problem with the Shura Council. My understanding is that there was no, apart from the fact that there are political statements being made, that there has been no judgment and no case against the elections for the Shura Council. And in that case, the Shura Council is valid. We have to recognize that in every country in the world, there's no such thing as a completely perfect system. And sometimes there are things which are illegal or that are not as legal as they could be, but they are discovered, for example, when it's too late to do something about it, or that nobody brings attention to it. So, for example, if there is a problem with the Shura Council, then somebody needs to investigate it, and if it's serious, then they make a case, and if there's a judgment, fine. But I think that we need to move away as a country right now, given all what's going on. We need to move away from trying to have this quid pro quo, tit for tat. You did this to my people, so I will do this to your group. That we need to redo this, we need to redo this election, we need to redo the Shura Council. I think that it's very important that we try to move forward. And where there are no legal disputes, we don't create them unnecessarily, and really try to just move the country forward.
Do we have the tools to move forward? I mean, we don't have a constitution, therefore those in the decision-making seat, they don't really know what the rules of the game are, so to speak. We don't have a parliament. We still don't have, I mean, we have a government that is sort of running the business, but this is a temporary government, and a new government has not been put in office. I don't want to editorialize here, but I'm sure when the government is in office, we'll have a lot of disputes about who has been selected to be present in the government. I mean, this is also... what do we have to work with? I don't mean to draw a bleak picture, but in reality, what do we really have to work with? We don't know if it's a presidential system, if it's a parliamentary system, if it could be a mix. I mean, the entourage of the president are mostly from one direction thus far. The Salafists are rejecting the idea of a Copt being in a high-level position, or a female even being in a high-level position. I mean, what do we have to move forward with?
Well, do you want me to take that? Or okay.
Go
okay. Just very quickly, I mean, I'll say a couple of things. what we have to look forward to is the fact that we've done a much better job in this country of going through the messy process that comes after a revolution. All we need to do is look at the countries around us to see how they are dealing with their messes. Libya next door still to this day has a much deeper security problem than Egypt does. There's a great degree of lawlessness and armed forces running around. We need only look at Syria. Yemen today experienced yet another suicide blast. In other words, the way that we are handling our process in this country is not optimal by any definition, but it's much better than what is on offer around us. So we do need to build on that. That's one positive thing. Another thing is that, yes, we don't have a constitution that we'd like to have. We have an interim constitution. We don't still have a cabinet of ministers based on the new government. And yes, you're right, there will surely be a lot of debate about who's selected to handle which portfolio. But we really have to keep looking forward. We can look where we are now and see the negative side of it, and it is difficult, and it is negative, and it is complicated. But there is hope, and we do have to move forward. With regards to looking at the presidency, yes, the president has surrounded himself with people who are affiliated with the Muslim Brotherhood. But let's be frank, this is politics. They have won politically that office. In every country around the world, the executive surrounds themselves with people from their own political persuasion. The clever ones bring a mix of people. So how he designs and develops his system, we will ultimately have to respect it and hope that they make less mistakes and do things the right way. But the short answer is, no, it's not perfect, but it could be a lot worse.
Always an optimist.
Now, I think we are luckier to complete what the picture my colleague gave. We are luckier than those around us because the army did not stand against the public. It's a miracle. We should be very, very happy and grateful. And what's more, after the revolution, as if Egypt discovered itself for, I think it was from the 25th of January till the 12th of February, which I think, 18 days or something.
Yes.
That was real Egypt. There was no difference, no gap between classes, no gap between, according to religion, based on religion, Muslims and
There was very strong cohesiveness.
Egypt found itself. There was such a cohesion. Very strangely enough, it disappeared. All of a sudden, Egypt changed into 85 million unit. Each person became a unit because it was a freedom we never knew.
Yes.
So everybody thought, didn't know what means being free. That was the great danger. And that's what happened. And so there was conflict. Every small, minute minority or group claimed its rights and didn't think of the condition of the country, of the future of the country. And this is very dangerous. I mean, the country was on the verge of bankruptcy, but every government official and every worker wants a raise and doesn't work. So you don't work, there's no production. One of our ministers said, frankly, Egypt is on the verge of bankruptcy, and he was kicked out.
Because he was honest.
So really, that's the case now. We don't know if tomorrow we can have our daily bread. So this is very dangerous. Now we are in a very critical position. Apart from the fact that we are lucky that we are still alive, to say, compared to our neighbors, as it has been said. So with some goodwill, and now we have a president. We had elections, free and elections without any violation of human rights. So that is also a great progress. So we have all we need now is goodwill and unity of the country and representation of each one. What lacked in Egypt is that, for instance, Upper Egypt was so different from Lower Egypt.
Yes.
Here we are, almost some villages starved and so on. Copts don't have the right to many jobs. Women and also classes. If you belong to a low class, you can never think of becoming, I don't know, in a real position. So it was the criterion was not competence, the criterion was nepotism and so on, and now it is religion and still social class. So this religion, if it is really badly understood, instead of bringing us closer, if it's badly understood, it will be, as I have been a judge in former Yugoslavia, and I saw a country, a great country, dissolved and torn to pieces because of religion. Because
do you see us heading in that direction, or do you think, I mean, some people are saying that maybe one of the concerns that some parties have about the dissolving of the parliament is that those who manage to secure a very high representation will not be doing so in the second round of elections, that the Islamism of politics, so to speak, has dropped somewhat. Do you see it, or don't you see it?
No, I think, you know, this is the rule or the method of trial and error. It was good that we tried elections. I was charged by the National Council of Human Rights to supervise the elections. I went to the country and so on, and all people went there, the peasants, the farmers and so on, went in, and sometimes I asked them, are you ready to vote? Did you choose your candidate? They said, of course, it's the man of God. We're going to the man of God. That's all they knew. They didn't know if there are parties or anything. And so that was the first contact with elections,
yes,
with democracy. And now we had the parliament. We tried the parliament. People saw the pros and the cons of those whom they chose. And I think if we have new elections, other people will be chosen.
The results will differ.
Not necessarily those we chose and discovered what they really are. So I believe there will be a change, and this is very healthy. This is even scientifically valid. The trial and error we tried. So it's like, you know, if you hire somebody and you put him on trial for a year and so on before giving him the job. So let's say we tried the elections, and now we have to do it. As far as the constituent committee is concerned, it does not represent Egypt. It represents a majority. Supposedly, it's a majority, according to the first elections, but a constitution should be made by the whole population. A constitution is basically made to protect the minorities, because the majority doesn't need a constitution. They have the power. The constitution is there to defend rights and to stop privileges. So minorities should be there present completely, and each one.
Do you see it in that committee?
This is exactly how. So you can't say the majority. A constitution is made by the majority. Yes, laws are made by the majority. It's fundamental. We can't do otherwise in the parliament, but not a constitution, because it is defending human rights, and human rights should be respected by as far as every creature is concerned in the country.
Okay, gentlemen, as we talk, before we have a few minutes to wrap up, and we should be touching on an issue, which is our president is in Saudi Arabia as we talk, the first official or the first visit by the Egyptian president to any foreign state. The significance of the fact that the first visit is to an Arab country and to Saudi Arabia, what do you read into that? Is there something that we should be reading, or is it...
Well, in this part of the world, we like to read a lot into everything, and surely there's always something.
In politics, you have to.
Absolutely. I would say a couple of things. It's a short visit, first of all. Before the visit, the president was consumed with some of the domestic issues related to this constitutional issue, but he also had a meeting with the business community and the business sector.
Yes.
And there's no doubt that the portfolio with Saudi Arabia, it's economic, it's political, it's regional security, it's multidimensional. I think it's a positive. The positive side of it is that it does send a signal I think, in a way, it's an extending of an olive branch that, yes, I represent political Islam. Yes, I represent a republican, non-monarchy system. But we recognize the inter-Arab relationships, and we're not here to try to export our revolution or to threaten in any way Saudi Arabian interests. I think that's important. I think there's a lot of things that are behind the scenes that people are not aware of. There's a great deal of Saudi investment in Egypt, well over $25 billion of investment in Egypt. And it's in several different sectors. And what a lot of people may not be aware of is that a lot of businesses that are Saudi-owned are not operating properly in the past couple of months. And especially since the election. There are a lot of strikes in the factories. And there is a perception on the Saudi side that these are being engineered by individuals or by different political forces in the country that are trying to block these companies from succeeding, because there is a perception that Saudi Arabia took a political side.
Yes.
Now, whether that's true or not is irrelevant. What's relevant is that there are problems for their investments in this country. They extend to other countries' investments and even Egyptian investments. And the Saudi Arabian investors have brought this up, and they have made a point of wanting it to be a key issue. So it is probably being discussed. And I think it's good to do that right now. The other thing, very quickly, to close, is that Saudi Arabia is the most important, by far, Arab country with voting rights in the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank. Yes. Very soon after a cabinet is formed, the Morsi presidency will try to finalize an arrangement with the IMF in order to allow a cascade of other assistance and debt relief to start taking place, because they use the IMF agreement as the benchmark for how they will structure all these other forms of assistance. So visiting Saudi Arabia is multidimensional. It's economic, it's political, it also has a regional security dimension. And I think that it's not a bad move if it's handled right behind closed doors.
Okay, we have 1 minute. I'm sorry for you to...
Sorry. No, I don't need it. No, I can't say. No, don't press me. I have to speak.
Go ahead.
Let me speak or not?
Go ahead, please, go ahead.
All right. I think our main target should be Africa. Of course, Saudi Arabia is great, and financially, economically, it will help us. But we should take care we can have investments, but they should not invest their ideas in Egypt and their way of life. Egypt has been the center of civilization, not only in this part of the world. Our professors went there. We gave them our art. Everything was the center of what can I say, of knowledge and of light. So now we should not be there to accept ideas which never belonged to us, coming from the desert. So this is I'm very categorical about it. I prefer to have less economy, but to maintain the civilization of Egypt from every side. Now even the songs are being changed and influenced by other countries. The ideas, the thoughts, the way we dress. This is the loss of Egypt. So we have, and then Africa should be our main concern now. It has been neglected for 30 years or more, and apart from the fact that we are Africans, this is our source of life. So
our source of water. And
water is life. I can live without money, but I can't live without water for more than 48 hours. So we have to know that. And our government should really know that it has been neglected, and even we are accused of other things by our African brothers.
Well, Israel has recognized the value of Africa and the water, and it's working on this.
And all I ask the president, more than going to Saudi Arabia and of course to Africa, he can also send we have got great men in Egypt who worked for Africa since Nasser.
Yes.
One of them is the president of my Egyptian Council for Human Rights, and so on, who was at the source of our relationship.
Yes.
I would hope sincerely that our president devotes all his time to unite the Egyptians. There should be no Copt nor Muslim in Egypt. It should be as it was at the beginning of the revolution. No poor, no rich, and no Sinai, people from Sinai who are now seeking their independence, and or people from the south, or Nubia. We should all be one, and this is, I think, this should be the mission of our president, and everybody will adore him if he does that and forgets those who brought him. He says, no, now I'm the president of all Egypt, as he said in the beginning. That's what I would love to see him do.
Gentlemen, on that positive note, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Let us hope that tomorrow will bring a brighter day for Egypt. And I'd like to thank you both for your fruitful input. A pleasure to have you with us this evening. I'd like to thank you, the viewers. Tomorrow, another day and another debate, and good night.